So the webinar today, it will be about current software trend in the labor market. So you will get information what you need as a software engineering, as a computer science engineering, or in any way, if you are an engineer, what it's needed in the market, what the skills that the market nowadays asking from the graduated people. So yeah, you will learn a lot today, and hope that you will concentrate and focus about the point there. We will be mentioning the Dr. Mr. Taron Sukhani. So for furthermore, let me introduce a little bit about Sukhani, that there are still a little bit people are coming. So we will just have 5 minutes before we go further with Mr. Sukhani, and I will give a brief short introduction about him, and then he can join us. And so let's get just started, because it's already now 6-minute play. So as I told you today, our webinar, it's about the current software trends. Our speaker for today, we are pleased to welcome Mr. Taron Sukhani. But before I welcome him, I wanted to give you a brief introduction about who is Taron Sukhani. Actually, Taron Sukhani is a business and information technology professional with more than 20 years of experience working in multinational companies in the US, Europe, Asia, South America, and the Middle East. Actively, Taron Sukhani involved in web skills, software development across a variety of industries. He has held a number of different senior development and executive positions, including that of Chief Information Officer, CIO, and Chief Technology Officer, CTO, Director also, and board member. He brings with him a wealth of experience working with people from all levels, of the organizations and different business functions, such as human resource, finance, operations, sales, risk management, engineering, manufacturing, and accounting. He is experienced in developing and managing large IT operations, information technology operations, and was involved in improving business operations in companies such as Dell, Advanced Micro Devices. Everybody know about it now. It's called AMD, and Experian, as well as regional conglomerates such as Indra in Asia Pacific. Taron Sukhani has traveled extensively in Asia Pacific, lending his expertise to dozens of small to medium enterprise as well, converting everything from project management to driver-based budgeting. Taron Sukhani has conducted training as well as facilitated training workshops in Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, and various other Asia Pacific countries. focusing in areas of project management, enterprise consulting, leadership and strategic management, security, teamwork, and other soft skills. In addition to enterprise computing, programming, software architecture, big data, data science, machine learning, industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, blockchain, initial coin offering, which stands for ICO. Also STO, which stands for standard training operations, as well as IEO, which is standard for International Economic Organization. He is highly energetic and has strength passion for developing people. Taron Sukhani graduated from summa cum laude with Master of Science, MS, in Information Systems, and as well he has a Master of Business Administration in Finance and Operations. Finance and Operation Management from Loyola University from Chicago, receiving Beta, Gamma, Sigma, and Alpha Sigma, new recognition upon graduation. The highest honor that can be bestowed upon a graduate. He also has a bachelor degree in biology, math, and computer science, and business administration, international business administration. He is certified Agile, Scrum trainer, certified Java and Net programmer, developer, certified machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence, a specialist in Python and Java, certified information security, and he is specialist in CICO, which is Chief Information Security Officer, and certified business intelligence expert. He also completed an online DPA, which means the Doctor of Business Administration by coursework, as well as several programs in artificial intelligence and entrepreneurship from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Stanford University. Furthermore, let us welcome our speaker for today, our Mr. Taron Sukhani. We are pleased to have you here today, and we hope that you will give us the information that students in field of software and computer science will gain to help them in the future. And let us start with Mr. Sukhani. You are welcome. You can join now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Can you see me too, or I don't know, does it work? Yeah.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry, I haven't had anything to drink like since 5 a.m. and I can't talk. So you'll have to bear with me. So yeah, are we ready to start? Or I think we're supposed to officially start at around 3:30 or something like that.
It's supposed to be like that, but we can start earlier. So we have time for asking question.
Okay, let's get started then. Let's get started. I mean, we have quite a few participants, so we might as well get started. I think you have to enable sharing. You'll have to give me sharing capability.
Okay, sure. You can share.
Okay, great. It still says disabled. Let me wait a bit. Nope, still says disabled. I think probably you'll have to try again. Nope, it still says disabled. It's got to be a setting over there. Yeah.
Sorry, maybe this is a technical issue.
Yeah, no problem. Just let me know.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
So I think now you can start.
Yep, it works. So
Yeah.
let's get to it. Okay. So hopefully everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
And I think I can. Yeah, cool. I think I can get started then. Hey, welcome everyone again. So today's webinar is on current software trends, the skills and expertise you need to succeed in the world of software development, right? Is everyone here like in software development, by the way? Maybe you can just say yes in the chat or something like that. I'm assuming everybody is like, you know, IT or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. And I think you're all students, right? Are you all about to graduate? Yeah, you're all about to graduate. Yeah.
Except me, I'm still in third semester, second year.
Ah, okay. Okay, cool. Okay, then yeah, let's get started. So I think we already had an introduction about me, so we can skip that. And we can move straight into you know, the agenda, which is a framework for IT jobs. We'll cover that first. Then we'll talk about the skills and expertise that are in demand. And then we'll go into strategy for job success. Okay, a framework for IT jobs. So what does an IT department look like nowadays, right? And I'm still beginner. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So we do have some non-software people here as well. So what does an IT department look like nowadays? So IT departments have evolved over the last decade. Well, they've evolved more over the last decade than all the previous decades combined. And, you know, so the reason for that, right, is because of the introduction of a number of new technologies, such as big data, machine learning, IoT, and something we call XOps, which includes like, you know, DevSecOps, data ops, ML ops, you know, all the other ops, right? And so all of this stuff really has, you know, come into maturity only within the last decade or so. And as a result of that, right, the IT departments of today look very different than, you know, the IT departments even 10 years ago. And so, you know, what does that mean, you know, for companies and for you as a potential employee, right? What that means is that all companies. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, sure.
Oh, okay. Is everything okay? Everyone is. I think there's still people coming in, right? There's still people coming in. But yeah, so basically the IT department looks completely different. And that basically means that all companies are really just data companies now, right? And whichever companies are great at manipulating their data, right? And of course, deriving insight from that data, right, are the ones that are going to succeed, right? And so basically, you can say that competitive advantage comes from intelligent automation at scale, right? And so that's what these technologies allow you to do. Okay, so even smaller companies stand to benefit from these technologies. Yeah, so you don't have to be some big, behemoth to kind of benefit from all this. Another kind of trend, that's happening, within the software industry, is the rise of APIs. Yeah, so APIs have taken over as a preferred system, as the preferred systems integration option, both inside and outside companies. In some cases, companies have completely transformed their software development approach into modular business services driven by microservices and dedicated feature theme teams, right? So in this approach, APIs become gateways to these business services across different UI, UX form factors, simplifying deployment and maintenance exponentially, right? So, my company, of course, is no exception to this, right? We have embraced an API-centric approach to doing business many years ago. And so, an API would look something like this, right? You would have all these resources, and essentially you can interface with, business services, through these kind of APIs, right? Whether you're doing reporting or you're doing searching, or you're doing anything that's, domain related, right? Whether it's e-commerce or edutech, which in my case is edutech, right? And so that's why you'll see, as we go, that different APIs will cater to different needs of the company, the different business services. The other thing that, accompanying this kind of, API driven approach is REST and Json. So REST is basically the approach that you can take to your API design. And, generally that approach is using, these kind of put and post and, get and delete in order to do CRUD operations, right? On your data, right? Create, read, update, delete operations on your data. And JSON is generally the universal format that, you'll see. So this is why JavaScript, is now, of course, one of the most important languages, arguably on the planet, right? Because obviously JSON itself is JavaScript, right? JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And so a lot of the data, stuff that we work with is really just in JSON format, right? And, we talked about REST. Well, REST stands for representational state transfer, and we talked about those verbs, right? The get, post, and up, delete, and all that stuff. So basically, a combination of these different approaches, along with microservices as business services, is, what is the governing trend today, right? In terms of software development. Okay. And I talked about, the different kinds of business services, right? And they're basically arranged in a hierarchy, okay? So we call these API architectures, okay? And it kind of starts off at the bottom, right, with cross-cutting concerns, right? So for example, users, roles, sessions, all the management of your users, right? Permissions and things like that, right? Or anything that is common to your business, regardless of your business, right? So those are called cross-cutting, concerns, and that becomes your cross-cutting API. And then on top of that, you would build application-specific APIs. So for example, if you're doing e-commerce, right? Or you're doing something that's blockchain related, right? So all of that would be application-specific APIs. And then on top of that, you'd have domain-specific APIs, like for example, EdTech, or maybe decentralized finance or something like that, right? And so they would leverage the services beneath them, right, in this kind of hierarchy. And so that's, precisely what you would see over here, right? So here is the cross-cutting concerns. And then we start moving into e-commerce, right? Categories, wish lists, cards, testimonials, orders, and customers, and coupons are all examples of e-commerce, right? Whereas courses, intakes, attendances, trainers, and feedback have to do with edutech, right? And so you can see that it builds on top of one another, right? So APIs are definitely popular everywhere, and so that's how you would integrate with other companies, right? So if other companies have other business services that you require, you basically build a portfolio, a huge portfolio of business services, whether that's payment gateways, whether that is communications with SMS or with push notifications, whatever. The list goes on and on. Of course, there's an infinite number of these APIs that we could use in our applications. So kind of combining this all together, we basically have an IT department that is half product system and half software system, right? And there's like a continuous feedback loop from one to the other, right? And the product system is dominated, of course, by, the business level people, right? Those who are getting requirements from customers and users, and are essentially managing, these requirements, right? Whereas the software system is obviously about the actual development of that software, and then it's kind of broken up, right? So the product system is broken up, the software system is broken up, and we can talk about how the software system is broken up, right? In terms of the software system, it's essentially broken up into production and deployment, right? And we can see a common architecture for production, right? So, for example, this is a common architecture that a lot of companies use nowadays, and we can actually kind of like delve into this a little bit more. But it's probably clearer also to see this, in probably. We can actually go into it and kind of like zoom in a bit. It'll be a little bit clearer if we do that. So if I zoom in a bit, you can see that this is the data architecture. So in other words, the software architecture actually consists of two sub-architectures, which are the data architecture and the development architecture. The data architecture is what we call data science, okay? And the development architecture is what we call computer science or software development, okay? And so data science and computer science kind of meet in the middle. Literally, they meet in the middle, which is right over here, right? So these architectures kind of blend into themselves, right, at the persistence layer, right? The data science architecture or the data architecture is concerned with getting second-party data, data from different APIs, and potentially from other sources, IoT, whatever, into your company, right? You want to bring that information into your company. Sometimes that's real time, sometimes that's batch, right? So this is called big data analytics, yeah? And once we get all that data pumped into the right databases, from there, our software architecture, our development architecture can take over, right? So in the development architecture, we have our API gateways, we have our microservices, right? And they essentially communicate with one another to get some business service done, right? So if a customer down here, makes an order, the order will go through whichever device they're using into the API gateway. The API gateway will process the request. It may have to hand off to a bunch of microservices. The microservices then would fulfill that request, come back to the API gateway. The API gateway would then respond back to the user saying, yeah, I've done your order. But in the process of doing that, right, there has to be communication with these databases, right? And so this is what we normally call, transaction processing, right? And transaction processing eventually makes its way, right, into our data warehouse, right? And so that's called data warehousing, right? Also known as OLAP, right? There's also something called real-time processing, which is over here, right? And that has to do with message queues and time series. That's for real-time data, right? And so this is a common architecture that, you'll see nowadays in a lot of companies, right? And a lot of this stuff didn't exist 10 years ago. I mean, they didn't do this way 10 years ago. Very few companies did it this way, right? Only a handful, right? And nowadays it's become, more common, right? So this is something that you would expect to see if you're, kind of entering into software development, depending on, of course, the level of maturity, of the company, right? And if we look at the deployment architecture, right? If we look at the deployment architecture is about, getting your software into the hands of users, right? And the people that are responsible for that are different than the people who are responsible for data science and software development. Okay. So these people are usually people who are, for example, testing, they're doing security testing, performance testing, functional testing, UAT testing, right? And then they're also managing, there's also people that are managing the environments. So for example, you'll typically have 4 environments, right? Development, testing, staging, and production. Staging and production should be very similar to one another. And oftentimes they may be hosted in the cloud, right? Or in some kind of data center. Whereas development and testing, right, is usually on-prem. Development could be your laptop, and testing could be just some server that you just set up on the side, So that's generally, what companies are doing. And there's someone called a release manager, right, who is responsible for ensuring that whatever features were promised at a particular timeline are being delivered, right? And that's where the versioning comes from, right? Version 1.1, version 1.2, the release manager is the one handling that, right? And once we do a release, right, it has to end up obviously on a bunch of servers in a data center. So it could be a virtual data center, it could be a real data center, or it could be a hybrid data center. Hybrid meaning both public and private cloud, right? So in this architecture, you can see that we have a hybrid, fail over or fail safe architecture. What does that mean? That means that we could deploy to AWS and GCP at the same time, right? And we could use containerization, such as Docker Kubernetes, to manage those instances. And then if there's any failure of any major infrastructure, it can fail over to our on-prem, right? Which is a private cloud, yeah? And the most important thing is to make sure that everything is consistent. So whatever it looks like here, it should also look the same way over here and all over the place, right? So that way it's easy to maintain, right? And of course, easy to, update and easy to scale and all the other benefits that you get, right, from doing that. So we call that the deployment architecture, yeah? So what are the kinds of job categories that exist, that you can kind of focus your attention on, right? What kind of jobs can you get out there, right? So, if you're senior level, of course, like C-level, then obviously we're talking about like chief data officer, CTO, CIO, or chief experience officer, or chief analytics officer. Actually, I should have moved those to the top there, but because here's the chief data officer, here's the chief analytics officer, here's the CTO, CIO, here's the chief experience officer, the CXO, right? The CXO is responsible for UI, UX, right? What experience our users going to have, right? CTO, CIO are responsible for the software development, right? Making sure that, the software is being produced with decent quality and everything is being done properly, blah, blah, blah. And the chief data officer is responsible for making sure that data is coming into the company properly with the right quality and everything, right? Chief analytics officer, of course, is responsible for AI, machine learning, deep learning, all that stuff, right? And then there's other positions, right? They're within each of these scoped areas, yeah? So there's plenty of job categories available out there, right? So these are some of the most popular, right, that have emerged, meaning in demand. Okay, let's get now, into and transition into these skills that are actually in demand, right? And it kind of all starts off with deciding what is your personal goal, right? What are you trying to achieve as an individual? Maybe you're working within a company as a developer, or you want to work in a company as a developer. Maybe you want to be a freelancer or consultant or business owner, right? Maybe you want to build your own apps, software as a service, right? Kind of like an entrepreneur or something. Maybe you just want to do content creation. You're like a YouTuber or a podcaster or someone like that. You've got your blog or whatever. Or you're just doing it as a hobby, So you've got to decide, what do you hope to achieve before you decide on what skills and expertise you want to build up, right? So in terms of the top programming languages, right, it really hasn't changed in 10 years, believe it or not. Java and C are still at the top, okay? And the reason for that, is because of the enterprise, right? Because systems development and enterprise development is still the majority of development, that's kind of like done today, right? So that's not going to change anytime soon. Okay. However, Python has been rising in the ranks, and its position has definitely changed in the last 10 years. Now it's already sitting at number 3, right behind Java. And as you can see, it continues to increase. The change continues to be positive. So it's really catching up to Java. And Python remains the dominant language for data science and machine learning, right? It also remains a dominant language or a popular language for scripting, right? So definitely Python has to be in your toolkit, in your tool belt. Now, by the way, this is called the TOB index. You can look it up yourself. So the top in-demand skills nowadays are, number 1, cybersecurity. We'll get into that, of course. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, IIoT, big data, PWA. PWA stands for progressive web applications, right? Java and the JVM, right? Docker, Kubernetes. Yeah. So, of course, cybersecurity is, very in demand nowadays because of COVID, right? So many businesses are migrating to the cloud, and a lot of those businesses don't set up the access and identity management, AIM, properly, or identity and access management, IAM, properly, right? So what happens if they don't set it up properly? Well, then data gets exposed, right? So that's one problem, right? The other problem is, or the other reason, is 5G. So 5G is a new technology. It's expected to transform a lot of industries going out into the future. And, that means that we also have to worry about security when it comes to, these networks, right? Another industry that seems to be coming up is cyber insurance, right? So they're looking for people who have somewhat of a technical background to sell insurance or to come up with insurance policies, right? Preventing attacks, right? So obviously this is more of a preventative approach or prophylactic approach to cybersecurity. And they need a lot of people like that, as well. What about, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, all that stuff? So there are 2 major areas. There's computer vision and there's natural language processing, okay? Within computer vision, of course, as you can probably tell, right, there are a lot of applications. In terms of predictive analytics, this is about, helping companies to make more money or save money because they understand their customer better, right? I actually have an entire presentation devoted to that. For those who may be interested, just let me know. We have an entire presentation devoted, to essentially customer analytics, right? And of course, natural language processing, all of that stuff in call centers, whatever, chatbots, right? Those are becoming a lot more popular. And then of course, robotics. These could be software robots. We generally, when we're talking about software, we're talking about software robots, of course. So this is also known as RPA, or robotic process automation. Okay, so IoT, of course, IoT, Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things. This has grown, exponentially. It's exploded. The market continues to grow. This is a great area to pursue, right? As factories become smart factories and so on and so forth, right? And of course, this ties well, really well into big data analytics, right? And what is big data analytics, right? So big data analytics is the use of certain tools, right? Number one, right, to extract data, right, from data sources, right? So this could be like building your data pipelines, right? It also involves splitting your data, right, into real time and batch, and storing your data temporarily, and then finally storing your data into a more permanent or persistent store, right? And of course, it involves processing that data, transforming that data, ETL or ELT, right? Extract, transform, load, or extract, load, transform, right? In the architecture that I showed you, it was actually an ELT that was, being demonstrated. So if we go back over here, the data comes, through these pipelines, right? It gets loaded into a temporary store, and then it gets transformed, right, into our data warehouse. So that's ELT, right? And so there's a lot of technologies involved in that, and in some cases, people include data visualization as part of big data, right? And so data visualization means, looking at your insights in charts and graphs or dashboards or storyboards, right? And there's a lot of demand in data visualization. There's a lot of demand, in this type of database management. There's a lot of demand for setting up data pipelines, for example, using Apache Airflow, right? So the sky's the limit when it comes to, big data, right? So big demand for big data. Progressive web applications are a new type of approaching front-end design. Okay, the traditional approach is to create a web, application for the desktop, and potentially to create one for mobile, right? So it could be, for example, responsive, or it could be native. Progressive web app says you only need one code base. So you have one code base, right? And you run everywhere. So that code base recognizes the form factor that it's in. So if it's in a desktop browser, it knows that and will display accordingly, right? If it's on a phone, it knows that and will behave accordingly. If it's on a tablet, it knows that and it will behave accordingly, right? So you won't even know the difference. You wouldn't even know that it's the same code base, right? So of course, there's a huge benefit from having a single code base like this, right? Next up is Java and the JVM, right? There's a lot of languages that run on the JVM, right? One of the more popular languages nowadays is Kotlin. And Kotlin is what we use for building Android native applications, right? That's actually running on the JVM, okay? Which is the Java virtual machine. And then, finally, we can't, of course, leave out, deployment, right? And in terms of deployment, DevOps is a big deal. DevSecOps is a big deal. But really the heart of it is the ability to scale your applications at the point of need, right? And so this is where Docker and Kubernetes come in, right? So Docker allows you to containerize your applications, and Kubernetes allows you to orchestrate those containers so that you can grow the number of containers or reduce the number of containers, as and when needed, right? Okay, let's get into the strategies for job success. The job interview, keys to success. First and foremost, focus on improving your soft skills, especially collaboration and communication. Okay? If you cannot explain what you're doing, and if other people in your team cannot explain what they're doing, that's not good, right? Employers are becoming more willing to invest in a well-spoken junior resource who can be trained rather than a guru who does not communicate well, right? Be honest and say that you don't know while suggesting how you would go about finding the answer, right? Now, of course, it depends on the company, but if the company is, like where they're very rigid, well, I mean, I wouldn't want to work at that company, but that's just me, right? But basically, if a company is good, right, they want you to demonstrate your ability to solve problems and think critically. That's what they're interested in, right? Problem solving and critical thinking. So any good company is going to look out, for people who have, the right mindset, that have the right ability to look at problems, abstract them out, and solve them critically, right? They're not interested in people with rigid mindsets if they're a successful company, right? An IT-oriented organization is always looking for multi-skilled talent who can fill in knowledge gaps, right? So if you have cross-platform skills, that's great, So if you can do a little bit of DevOps, and a little bit of software development, and maybe a little bit of ELT, that's great. You're going to be more valuable, right? Now, in order to get to that stage, of becoming valuable and multi-skilled, you need to develop a learning system, right? So here are my steps on becoming a thoughtful person, okay? Number one is, even though you're in a university, ignore schools and universities and what you're commonly taught when it comes to job placement, right? When it comes to recruitment or job placement, when it comes to hiring, right? Or even retention, right? Because these represent the assumptions of society and not the future, right? The future is not determined by these universities. The future is determined by industry, right? And then they put demands on the universities, right, to essentially modernize curricula, right? Focus on the humanities, English and foreign literature, anthropology, psychology, economics, right? These are actually the things that are going to be helpful to you later on in life, okay? Because understanding human behavior is the key to success, right? 92% of success is EQ and 8% is IQ, right? I'm sure you must have heard that before. Becoming technically literate. So this is crucial because, a lot of people have gaps, right? A lot of people have gaps in their knowledge. And it's really important that you fill in those gaps, right? And it's really important that you have a mentor, right, that you can reference that will help you to fill in those gaps, right? Apply math and science to daily life, right? Take a look at probability and statistics and see how you can apply it to daily life, right? Try hypothesis testing, try doing experimentation, right? Testing things out. These things will help you to improve, your problem solving and critical thinking skills, right? You should also develop a learning framework, right? And a learning framework is basically, how should you focus your learning, right? And I kind of think of it like concentric circles, right? So at the very inner core, you should focus on your code and quality within your code, technical debt and things like that, right? And this can be kind of, summarized kind of again, if I go back up here. It can be summarized like over here in software coding, right? So these are the behaviors that would help you to succeed. So this is what would be under code review, right? How do you actually do coding, right? What practices should you be doing, right? So this kind of goes through all that, right? So that's code review. The next level is software review, where we look at the entire software as a whole, right? How well do all the parts work together? Is it a seamless experience for the user? Or is it clunky and the user doesn't understand what the buttons and the links and all the other stuff do, right? What is what we call the customer journey or the customer experience, CX, right? Is it good or bad, right? So that's called the software review. And then finally, we have industry review. And industry review is all about understanding the industry you're in, right? Reading blogs, reading articles, being part of groups, they could be virtual groups or whatever, right? That will help you to essentially get caught up in any gaps that you may have, right? It also informs you as to what new tools are available out there that you can incorporate into your existing tool set, right? And so by focusing on the narrow all the way to the expansive, right? This is a great way to improve yourself as a developer, right? And I think that's pretty much it for today's session. So I did want to go into a few more things, if you don't mind, before we go into Q&A. Because I do want to talk about some of the things that we do, right? As a company, just so you know, right? Essentially, we're a bunch of software developers, okay? We're basically, we basically help nerds become better nerds, right? That's not our motto or slogan, right? That's just off the cuff. That's not actually what we put down, right? But we're very detail kind of focused company. We focus on the intricacies of software development and how to help people become better software developers, right? And in that regard, we have an academy and we focus on developer centric courses. Okay, if you want to follow us, you can follow us on LinkedIn, right? You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a bunch of videos there, completely free, right? These are some of the free webinars and free courses that we've conducted in the past. So I welcome you to get an idea about that. And you can also check out our events on PTIX. We'll host some events there. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we have our Abundant Academy, right? And Abundant Academy basically allows you to search, and book courses. It's still in alpha, so it's not, ready for prime time. But you can obviously search, for stuff that you'd be interested in, right? So whatever you're interested in, you can see that a lot of these courses are quite detailed, right? And so the goal is to really help you, right, depending on what area you want to focus on, right? And so you can, take a look at the outlines and everything and see if it's something of interest to you, right? And we always keep track of these different job categories, and so that way, whatever job category you want to focus on, we can help you to do that. And then I think if you do want to support us on Patreon, you can, right? That's how we deliver free content, right? Because we have support. So if you want to support us, please do. Yeah, it would help us a lot. And yeah, I think we can go to Q&A, and then after that, I guess we can do our feedback. I think Vimal, if you can paste the feedback form if you wish, if you're there.
Oh, thank you so much. So guys, you can even write the questions on the chat bar or just unmute yourself and say the question.
Yeah, please feel free to ask questions. So I'm curious, like, how many people already knew about all this stuff beforehand? How many people knew about all this stuff like before, from before? Here's a question. I think this says AI market depends on data. So big companies like Google dominate the market. So what do you think of the new business? Is there a chance? So if you're going to compete against Google, you're going to fail. So that's the short answer right there. So obviously, you know, the goal is not to compete against Google, right? The goal is to identify a problem that you believe that you can solve, right? Maybe with the help of others, right? So you can join an existing company to solve those type of problems. You can start your own company to solve those type of problems. But, you know, it's very important to understand that, you know, Google does one thing, right? Google is focused on high value products and services that have to generate them billions of dollars because their overheads are huge. So, you know, you're not going to be competing in that space, you know, more than likely. So you shouldn't have to worry about that. You just have to understand what technologies can I use, right, in order to solve the problems that exist. Let's see, any other questions? As a graduate student, what are the main skills I want to learn? I don't know. Do you mean graduate like a master's degree or something like that, or? Or do you mean, you know, after I graduate from university, what are the main skills I want to learn? I think that's the one, right? So yeah, if you graduated, right, the main skills you want to learn are the ones that I listed. Okay. So, you know, but it kind of depends on what you want to get into. Do you want to get into front end design? Do you want to get into back end? Do you want to get into DevOps? You know, do you want to get into project or product management? Do you want to get into, you know, data pipelines and data science? I mean, like, so it depends on what area you want to get into, right? What is your interest? Yeah, the slides will be shared with you. I think it's in the feedback form, right, Vimal? If you fill out the feedback form, yeah. And yeah, so it'll be provided to you there. Or you can share it here too. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. My question is that these days I focus only on Flutter and Dart for mobile application. Is that okay, or should I be somehow good in such as Web 2? Like I want to decide one code base and one platform for myself and master that. What would be your suggestion? Okay. So it kind of depends on, you know, what your career plans are, right? So if, for example, you like working in a large company, right? You know, where you're dedicated to, you know, native or hybrid, you know, mobile development, right? If you're in a large company where kind of like there's a department just for that, and you're just happy doing that all day and, you know, for many years, then yeah, you can just focus on that, right? You know, but at some point, obviously, you'd have to make a decision as to what else you want to do, right? But yeah, I mean, you could do that, you know, but of course, it requires that, you know, you work for a larger company, right? What type of internships should students consider doing? A mix of, say, 2 or 3 different base skills to get broad experience, or internships that focus on only their area of interest? You should never, ever, ever take an internship, right, that's focused on only one skill or area of interest. Okay. In many cases, in, you know, well, actually, the way it's supposed to be, because there are some really bad employers out there that don't even pay for internships. But in most cases, you're going to have a paid internship. So you may be paid 500 ringgits, 1,000 ringgits. It's not going to be obviously, gold mine here, but you're getting paid to learn, right? Why would you learn one thing if you're getting paid to learn, right? Take advantage of that situation. Go around the company, find out what people are doing, and see what is of interest to you, and then try to learn 2 or 3 different things that they're doing, right? And that way you can even decide, hey, this is the one I like the most, right? It's kind of like, internship is part of your college experience. It's part of your university experience. It's about exploration. It's about what, you fancy. What is the better IT or CS, and what is different between them in career future, especially in the Middle East? I'm still a freshman, I'm confused, CS or IT. Okay. So IT is, of course, the umbrella term, right? It encompasses everything, right? Computer science is a very narrow field, and I don't suggest you go into computer science unless you have an interest in research, right? So if you have an interest in research, then go into computer science, okay? But if you're interested just in software development, becoming a software engineer or whatever, then, go into general IT, right? Yeah, and those are good questions. Any other question? Any other questions? Any other questions?
Question. What's the biggest surprise in the industry in terms of new development areas you've seen?
Well, I mean, blockchain is definitely, you may have noticed I didn't include blockchain, right? Yeah. But, I think blockchain is probably the biggest kind of surprise, right? Because all this Nifty and DeFi stuff just appeared within a year or two, and it just exploded, right? And a lot of people just don't know what that's about, right? So I think that was like the biggest surprise. Yeah. Like, for example, how should we adopt blockchain? Where should we adopt blockchain? Is it a good idea? What are the drawbacks, right, if we do it? So I think that's probably the biggest thing that's happened. Yeah. I mean, the other thing, of course, has been deep learning, right? Deep learning has completely transformed things in the last, 5 years. I mean, Tesla's FSD would not be even possible without deep learning. So, the world has completely changed because of deep learning as well. Okay, what is the best for them? Focus on skills or continue study higher degree like master degree, for instance, and then. Okay. You should only pursue higher education, higher degrees, graduate and whatever, if and only if you have an interest in a certain area. Okay. Like I had an interest, in international finance, or finance in general, I just wanted to learn like how it was done. Right. I had an interest in, understanding certain algorithms in more depth, right? And so this is kind of like a personal thing, and so if you have those type of interests, right, that are more, personally, knowledge driven, then you should pursue higher education. But, to get a job, within IT, you don't, actually it's arguable whether you even need a bachelor's degree, right? You could actually do it without that if you're gifted. But, going beyond that is definitely not necessary for the types of jobs that are available out there. Let's see. What is the need to learn software engineering concepts? Okay. If you're not good, right, at software engineering concepts, the code that you produce will be garbage. When you produce garbage code, everyone else will hate you. Okay. So it's like, if you're jointly building a house, right? And, let's say you're horrible, at building the foundation, right? Well, everyone else is depending on you, and you built a lousy foundation, and then the whole house collapses, even though every other part was up to spec, right? But because you screwed up, right, you didn't have those concepts down pat, you disappointed everyone else, right? So it's very important that software development and engineering has some type of base professionalism, right? Has to have some type of base professionalism. And so that's the reason why, we write this down. That's the reason why we go to the trouble of writing this stuff down. A new feature branch should be done. This should be done this way. This should be done this way. This one, blah, 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 right? You've got to do things this way, right? Because this is what will make you a good engineer in the eyes of everybody else, right? And this will allow you to produce better software, and allow you to produce better software quicker, right? Let's see, what else is there?
I have a question here.
Yeah.
What we learn at university in language, just to show the console screen, the black screen, and that's it. So when we go to the companies or in the field of industries, it's something different. We need to build, an app or something like that. It will be a much difficult, or the studies in university, it will help us, or we will learn something new in the internship or something like that.
Right. So the purpose of an internship is practical experience, right? The purpose of university is knowledge, right? And concepts, right? So because when you work, right, your boss is not interested in concepts, right, and theories, right? So why do you learn concepts and theories? The reason why you learn it is so that you fundamentally understand what you're doing, right? If you fundamentally understand what you're doing, you're able to improve yourself, right?
So the internship, it will help you to work out on the real project of life, instead what we learn just the concept at university.
Yeah, because everything in life has a purpose, right? So, the purpose of university is to instill concepts and theories and knowledge so that you have in-depth, conception of what is going on, right? Oh, this is how a computer works, right? There's a clock. The clock will just keep on ticking, when the clock ticks, right? An instruction is pulled, from the instruction set register, right? In the stack, and you read the instruction, and then maybe whatever the instruction is, you move something into memory. Now, why is that important? Right? It's important to understand how a computer works, because, when you actually start to do high level things and you notice problems, you can go back to the basics and try to figure out what is the computer doing that's leading to this problem, right? If you only have practical experience, you can never improve. You can only do that single task, right? So we call this abstraction versus practical. So if you pay attention in university, you learn abstraction. And abstraction is what allows you to improve in life, right? And in your job. And practicality allows you to make money, right? It means that you're useful to people. You have utility value, right? And your goal in life is to achieve both, right?
Yeah, I just found what we learn at university and what we are going to do in the field of the companies or the internship is something different, something new. We will learn something new. That was in my mind. So we just need to know the logic and the concept. That's it.
Right. So in the real world, it's not going to work that way because, let me get rid of this. Right. Because in the real world, right, let's say this is some code, right? Right. Let's just take a look at some code. Okay. And so in the university world, they're going to teach you toy examples, right? Public class animal, public class, cat extends animal. The stupid shit. I mean, pardon my French. So stupid crap like that, that's not going to help anybody, right? So, so what is the purpose of all that? The reason why you're taught that way in university is because they want to make it as general, right, and universal as possible so that you only focus on the concept, right? If they did public abstract class, abstract product, and then they did a generics like this, right, with an abstract image, which extends that, which implements all this, do you think a student would understand what the hell is going on here? They'd want to kill themselves, right? So if you just say public class cat extends animal, everyone understands that, right? You don't need any domain knowledge to do that. So in university, we want to abstract away. That's why we call it abstraction, right? We want to abstract away the domain knowledge so that the student is only focused on the concept, namely polymorphism or encapsulation or inheritance, right? And so then they truly understand what that means, right? And once they get into the internship or the real world, they said, okay, look, I understand the concept. Now let me learn the domain, right? Let me learn about products and let me try to think, what is an abstract product? If I have any type of product in my e-commerce store, I could create an abstract product and then extend abstract product and have any type of product, because every product is going to have a name, description, category, status, type, images, and prices, right? And that's exactly what I learned in school, right? And so it's going to inherit that, right? And then I just need to change the behavior and add additional fields depending on the product that I have, right? And so that's what I mean, by that, is that can you go from abstraction, right, to concrete implementation and still understand those concepts, what you need to bring in, right? And so this is what it's supposed to be, right? Yeah. So yeah, great question. So I think another question is how someone can improve his soft skills. Do we have until 4:30?
Yeah, you can go. It's fine.
Because I think originally it was supposed to be from 3:30 to 4:30, right?
Yeah.
And we started early, actually. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, if you want, I can keep on answering questions if you're okay with that. That's up to you. How someone can improve his soft skills. Okay, great question, right? The answer is join Toastmasters and learn public speaking skills. Okay, so you need to learn two things. Number one, you need to learn public speaking. Public speaking means that you have the confidence to present your ideas, right? That's the first thing. So having the confidence to present your ideas. Number two is debating, right? Learn how to debate, how to present an argument, right? How to support the argument, right? And then how to reach a conclusion from an argument. Okay. Some people call this syllogism or dialectic or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. Learn about, making a cohesive argument, because in your job, you will need to defend decisions that you make, right? And if you can articulate it, right, well, right, and are not afraid, right, then people will pay attention, and you'll get your point across. What is better to take a master's degree for someone whose background is engineering? I don't think it really matters, really. Every software engineer should have a business background. So get a business background, somehow get it. either from your work or from school or whatever, right? Get a business background, because the business background will tell you how a company makes money. Okay. If you don't know what people will pay you for, right? Forget about work. It's like it's already over at that point, right? Because you have to understand, what are markets and what are people buying and what are they interested in, right? So that you can cater to them, right? Or if you're working for a company, you would know what features to prioritize, right?
Thank you. There's someone, Hamza Bajboz, he's raised his hand. So Hamza, you can talk.
Okay. Well, I can go through the questions. The next question is...
Yes, I have a different question, honestly.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You have mentioned that about one base code that work on multiple platforms. For instance, in the mobile development, there is a Flutter React Native. Do you recommend the person who wanna be interested or focused on the mobile development to start learning the native code, how to build application by using the native code, then he can move on for cross-platform codes, or what exactly?
I mean, every single software decision that has to be made, right, depends on the customer, right? So, for example, if you need to build a native app because something within your app requires native performance, then you do it, and only then do you do it, right? If your customer is not complaining, or if your customer is satisfied, then don't do it, right? So in other words, you have to learn about the customer, right? You have to understand business and the customer.
But in the market, what is more required? Do we just require the cross-platform ability skills, or?
Oh no, that's not how you do it, because there are companies that are hiring for both. So you just go to those companies that, that have your skill set, that what you can do, right? That's it. So you should never ever develop skills to get a job, right? Because you will get bored, you will not like it, right? You should focus on what you like in the internship. So like when I did my internship, umpteen years ago, I'm not going to say how old I am, I'm really old. But when I did my internship decades ago, right? I was still doing HTML and CSS and JavaScript and, web development and stuff like that. But this is before the days of JavaScript frameworks and things like that. I tried different things. I tried systems development, I tried enterprise, I tried web development, I tried so many different things. And then I kind of said, oh, I really like web development, so I'm going to focus more of my energy on that and, learn whatever I can about that and try to get a job in that. So then I actually got an internship in web development, and because that's what I wanted to learn. And then later on, I got a job in that, So you should already know and have in mind what is of interest to you. If you blindly just go by whatever's in demand, you just look up and say, okay, there's more jobs for this and more jobs for that, you're not going to have a very good career. Okay, let me go for the other questions then. Okay, as a student, we may not have the sufficient knowledge to master a job interview. So what tactics? Okay, so if you want to master a job interview, it's really simple. Okay, what you do is you talk to your friends, right, and see if any of them know a recruiter, okay, or a hiring manager, okay. And what you do is you call up the hiring managers and tell the hiring manager, I want to practice job interviews with you. So I'm not actually applying for any job that you have, right? I just want to practice with you, right? So get out one of the JDs, right? And let me pretend that I'm applying for that job. Yeah. And so in other words, doing a job interview is like learning how to ride a bicycle, right? You just keep on practicing. That's it, right? Because most job interviewers are going to ask the same stupid questions. You know, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? You know, the same stupid nonsense. And then, you know, so it's just about, you know, some of the questions you have to give them an answer that they would like. But the other questions are about you personally. They want to see who you are as a person. Okay. So it's just that there's plenty of guides online about that, but, you know, I guess to make it simple is, yeah, just do that, you know, just find a hiring manager that'll actually conduct a mock interview with you. You know, a lot of the fear in interviewing comes from the lack of proficiency in the language, whatever the language may be, right? So it could be your native language, it could be any other language, right? So part of the fear comes from, you know, lack of proficiency. The other part of it comes from, you know, what if I say the wrong thing, right? So, you know, you have to look at it as a numbers game, right? Hiring is a numbers game, right? If I apply to more jobs, right, I'll probably end up getting one of them, right? The odds would be in my favor. So you're not supposed to look at it like, oh, you know, I've got to do a perfect job, like this is a test, and I've got to get 100%. That's not what a job interview is, okay? You're not being judged on how competent you are as compared to somebody else, okay? That's not what a job interview is. A job interview is, are you malleable? Are you able to learn quickly, right? Do you have the right attitude and mindset, right? In other words, it's judging you as a person, right? Are you able to work with these other people in the company, right? Or are you an asshole, right? So, yeah, pardon my French the second time, right? So that's what they're looking at, right? Any good company is going to look at that and that alone. And that has nothing to do with your academic ability, right? You know, the only reason you're applying for that job is because you already passed the initial phase, right? You were qualified. Everything after that is about who you are as a person, right? Let's see what else. Would you recommend taking a minor in addition to your basic degree, or is the work field more interested in the skills learned from courses? Okay, remember, the purpose of university is to broaden your mind. So I took a lot of majors and minors, right? When I was in university, I did biology, you know, I did computer science, I did math, I did business, you know, accounting, I did finance, you know, I did everything, right? Because I wanted to learn down the line how to run my own business, right? And so that was my goal. My goal was not to get, you know, a job, you know, and things like that. That's not my goal, right? My goal is to learn something that could prove valuable later on, right? Yeah. So that's why education is important, right? It's the only time in your life, right, where, you know, you're learning for the sake of learning, right? So take advantage of that. No one learns to get a job. If someone tells you that they don't know what they're talking about, okay? You do not learn to get a job, okay? Getting a job has to do with you as a person, okay? So that's why all smart people complain, right, about their bosses, because like, this guy's a retard, you know, why does he have a job? Why does he make so much money? Well, because he's a better person than you, you know, and he doesn't go around calling people retards. He's a better human being, you know. He focused on his EQ, he focused on his you know, conversational skills, he focused on his demeanor, right? Yeah. So, you know, that's what a job is really about. What are the skills in web development domain that someone can get job in companies? Like, what are the things that companies are focusing on when it comes to development? Okay, yeah, I mean, the skills that people are focusing on is front-end development, right? So that could be, web responsive. It could be, hybrid native app or hybrid mobile app or a native app, right? Or it could be, HTML, CSS, JavaScript type of thing, Vue.js or Angular or whatever. So it kind of all depends on what type of. So in other words, a lot of young people have this problem where they focus on skills and not on customers. Okay, no company adopts a technology because it's cool. Okay, companies adopt technologies because it helps them to fulfill, right, a requirement for a customer. Right. So if you don't have a customer orientation, you won't know what jobs to apply to. You will just focus on skill sets and say, let me try to get the most skill sets I can, and then apply to these jobs. And hopefully I get lucky and get a job. That's not how it works. Right. Your employer will, your interviewer will know right away that you're just some type of encyclopedia of skills. Right. And probably master of none. Right. And you're just trying to get a job, right? And you're not going to get hired. I've interviewed well over 1,000, people, and I don't hire. I'm never going to hire those people, right? Because they're not interested in my company. They're not interested in my business. They're not interested in my customers, right? So why should I hire them, right? So if you don't learn that, you're going to be in big trouble, right? Yeah. Any other questions, or are we good to go? I think that's pretty much it, right?
Is there any question, guys? Just feel free just to talk.
No other questions?
I think no other questions. So
Okay, great.
we came to the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you so much.
We are really blessed to have you here today with us, and we appreciate really your great time that you are offering us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So we came to the end of our seasons for today, of our section for today. I hope everybody enjoy it and learn something new, and we hope that in future we will get more webinar and people they can join your websites. And
yeah, I mean, we invite you to explore, whichever areas, your weekend, whatever you have gaps, right? Always try to fill in your gaps, right? That's my best advice. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. We can just have a business, just a photo. Photo section. Can everybody open the camera, please? So, Ala, you will take the pictures.
Okay.
So, yeah, everybody open the camera for a photo, please. So, anybody else want to open the camera? It's not, it's not required. You can open it and you can not. It's up to you. Okay, great. We will take the pictures now. Ala, can you please snapshot? One, two, three. So have you taken the pictures? Miss Ala?
Yes, I have.
Okay, thank you so much. We great to have you today with us. We hopefully to have a lot of webinar with us again. We wish you all the best.
Thank you.
You can.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. We got really good attendance today.
It was great, actually. It was really great, and we learned a lot from you. We really appreciate it from you. And so, guys, feel free if you wanted to leave.
Oh, by the way, one other thing is that if you are weak, right, in public speaking and soft skills and EQ or whatever, right, or you don't understand customer behavior and all that stuff, and you want to fill in that gap, let us know, because we do have courses on that, that are specifically for IT people, right, to fill in those gaps.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hopefully a lot of students will contact you and take the advantages of those courses.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Have a great evening.
Yeah, have a great evening, everyone. And have a great Burpasa. Have a great breaking fast.
Yeah. And happy Ramadan for those who's observing the fasting month.